Welcome back. This is your fourth set of notes in Unit 3 Constitution. This set of notes we are going to spend some time really kind of discussing what it means for separation of powers and checks and balances. Now in the last set of notes over the principles, I just kind of gave you a brief definition of what separation of powers and checks and balances was or is, but this is going to go into much greater detail. So make sure you have your notes guide and to fill out the notes correctly, and we are going to start off with some review. Okay, so do we know who this guy is? Do we recognize him? We've talked about him before, way back in Unit 1. Maybe this will help you. Where did the idea of separation of powers come from? What person suggested it? And we talked about it back in Unit 1. We touched on it again in Unit 2 when we were talking the Enlightenment and the social contract theorists. Did you say Baron de Montesquieu? Hopefully, but if you didn't, it's okay. Just keep this in mind as we go forward. Baron de Montesquieu is the guy who kind of put the idea of separation of powers, taking the powers the government has and dividing them. So he's like, you should separate them into different branches, give those branches a way to check each other, to kind of control the power that they do get. And then he also suggested having different levels of government, so that federalism. So he's also involved in that principle of the Constitution as well. Okay, so let's do like kind of some why separation of powers. So there's not a spot for this on your notes, but maybe just kind of write it off to the side, kind of do some shorthand on here, just to remember. First off, you need to remember that the framers were worried about one person or group gaining too much power. Okay, so this is why they did the Articles of Confederation first. They created a very weak national government because they were concerned about that national government abusing its powers, as they said that they suffered under Great Britain prior to the Revolutionary War. So no one branch is given all the power. So we're going to separate that power out. If they don't have all the power, they can't abuse it. So Article 1, 2, and 3 in the Constitution detail how the powers are split among the other three branches. So it shows how they're going to divide the power and what each branch is entitled to do under that. And that goes back to that whole concept of limited government in our Constitution. Okay, so not unit 1, but the first one we're going to look at, the first branch we're going to look at, Article 1, is the legislative branch. From our notes back in our set two notes over the structure of the Constitution. This is the first article. This is, lazy or large. In our sentence of large elephants sit regularly and jump slowly. No, jump slowly and sit regularly. Oh, I can't even get it right. Okay, so make sure it's listed there that the legislative branch is made up of Congress, and Congress is the House of Representatives and the Senate. All right, so the legislative branch. So these are the jobs, things that Congress can do. So there's two slides that we're going to put in here, so make sure you're not taking up the whole box on your notes with this information, but they make laws and control spending. God, that is like their number one job. Okay, so when the citizens of the country complain about taxes or the budget, and they want to try to blame the president, whoever the president is, it's not the president's job to deal with taxes or to deal with the budget. Like the president doesn't make the budget, doesn't make the tax code. He signs those laws, but it is Congress's job. Okay, they collect taxes. So if someone complains about their taxes and how much taxes they're being taken out, it is Congress's job to do that. Okay, so it's really easy to blame like a single person versus blaming 535 people, but it is what it is. Okay, they coin money. So why does our money look the way it is? Why do we have a 1, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100? They have authorized bills of $10,000 and $1,000 bills. They're just not in circulation. Okay, why is our money on, who's on our money? Congress decides that. They establish post offices, and they set the standards for weights and measures. So if you are irritated that we are not on the metric system, like pretty much the rest of the westernized world, it's because Congress has not passed a law that says we have to be. They allowed us to be on the standard system. And then they're the ones who declare war. Shocks a lot of students that I have, that it's not the president. The president is commander-in-chief, but Congress is the one who has to approve that war, and approve the military action. All right, so make sure you've written these down in Article 1, Legislative Branch, on your notes. All right, so now let's talk about what Congress looks like very quickly, just kind of a brief overview. We will talk about this later in Unit 5, which is over the legislative branch in detail. So the House of Representatives, just really quickly, you need to be at least 25 years of age to be a member of the House of Representatives. Term is 2 years, so for every 2 years you need to get reelected. You do not have to be a natural born citizen, but you do have to be a citizen, and you need to be a citizen for at least 7 years before you can run for office. There are 438 members. 435 are voting, and then there are 3 non-voting members that represent some territories of the United States, like Puerto Rico, Guam, Washington, D.C. The Speaker of the House is head of the House. That's their title. So when you hear on the news someone referencing the Speaker of the House, that means they're the top person, the one that's ultimately in charge of what the House is considering for legislation. The Senate is age 30 years of age. You have to be at least 30. You have a term of 6 years, and then a citizen for 9 years. So they've gone up. Okay, the Senate is seen as representing the state, whereas the House of Representatives represents the people. This goes back to the Constitutional Convention and the Great Compromise. There are 100 members of the Senate, and the Vice President is head of the Senate. This is a constitutional duty for the Vice President of the United States. Okay, so this is on the left. There is the current Speaker of the House. This is Nancy Pelosi. You probably have recognized or maybe have heard her name. And then the gentleman on the right is the current President pro tempore, Patrick Leahy. Now, I just told you on the previous slide that the head of the Senate is a vice president, but I'm not putting Kamala Harris's picture up here. And the reason why is that the President pro tempore steps in and presides over the Senate when the Vice President is not able to do so. And the Vice President is not able to do so a lot because the Vice President doesn't get a vote in the Senate, cannot participate in the debates of the Senate unless there's a tie. And they can't ever participate in the debates, but they can break a tie in the Senate since they have an even number of members. All right, moving on. Article 2, in our sentence, this is elephants. Let's recall from back last week. The executive branch, this is the president and the executive offices. The executive office, what do they get to do? First and foremost, the executive branch gets to enforce and carry out laws. Okay, so enforce and carry out laws. That is their main function. That is what they need to do. So that's the president's job. The president is considered the chief executive. He is in charge of all executive agencies. So he is officially the top person for the FBI, CIA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Interior, Department of State, Department of Defense, the Justice Department. He oversees all of those departments. Okay. He is the chief of state. This means he is the one that represents the United States at certain events. So the equivalent to this in Great Britain is the king. Okay, like current king Charles or the previous Queen Elizabeth, they were chief of state. They were like seen as the symbol, okay, of the country. The president for us is seen as that symbol. It is not there's not a separation in that role. So the president will, when the president welcomes national championship teams to the White House, that's chief of state. When the president throws out the first pitch at a Nationals baseball game, that is being chief of state. They're, going to a royal wedding somewhere around the world, or a funeral, and representing the United States as the official dignitary. That would be a chief of state role. He is also commander-in-chief of the military. So he is the top commander in the military. He's the top. Okay. All the generals are to do what he says, essentially. Okay. Now, the commander-in-chief of the United States has to be a civilian. We want a civilian at the top of our leadership in the military. But often, he seeks advice from those generals. He's not going to disregard that advice that he gets from the generals. Vetoes laws. Is a job and a power that the executive branch gets. Negotiates treaties. And the last one is he's going to set government's policies. So if we have a law that says we're going to reduce our pollution in the country by 20%, he has to set the policy on how that's going to happen. The president typically turns that over to an agency. In this case, for pollution, it would be the Environmental Protection Agency. It might go to Health and Human Services as well, to set policies on how to reduce pollution. Okay, so car manufacturers, just manufacturing in general, certain manufacturing plants, those sorts of things. All right. So the executive branch, the president, you need to understand the president needs to be 35 years of age, and this applies to the vice president as well. The president will be elected for a 4-year term. They must be a natural born citizen. So what this means is when they are born, they get citizenship in this country, for the United States. So that means they are either born on what is considered U.S. soil, so one of the 50 states, one of the 5 territories, a military base, and an embassy around the world, or they are born on foreign soil, but they are born to U.S. citizens. One of their parents is a U.S. citizen. The United States is one of the few countries that grants citizenship from both land, from soil, and blood. Okay, this branch is also made up of the cabinet. So this is all your secretaries, Secretary of State, Defense, Interior, Education, and the Vice President. So you don't need to write this down, but you might want to peruse this list. Here are some cabinet positions. There are 16 official cabinet members, but then you also have some additional ones like the White House Chief of Staff, the Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency. Even though it's not considered a cabinet position, it acts like a cabinet position. All right, so here is our current executive branch. So the current president is Joseph Biden, and the current vice president is Kamala Harris. All right, last branch we're going to talk about today on our separation of powers is the judicial branch. So the judicial branch is the Supreme Court and the lower federal courts, and there are 2 levels of lower courts. So the judicial branch's job is to interpret the laws. These laws that we have passed, what do they mean? What does it mean that, car manufacturers have to have seatbelts? Okay, what does that mean? They're going to interpret those laws. They have the power of judicial review. In the 3rd set of lecture notes, we talked about judicial review being a principle of the Constitution. It's also tied into separation of powers and checks and balances, which is why why it's not always included on the principles of the Constitution list. So judicial review is just that whole idea of ruling a action of government of one of the other 2 branches as unconstitutional. Does it agree with the Constitution or not? Okay, so make sure you write these down on Article 3. Okay, here is a current picture of the Supreme Court as of 2022. We just had a new justice join the court. It is Ketanji Brown Jackson. My cursor is on the newest member of the court. There is a system in how you move throughout this like ranking and whatnot, but here it is. The person in the center right here, this is Chief Justice John Roberts. He always will sit in the center of their pictures. All right, now let's talk about checks and balances. So checks and balances is heavily tied into separation of powers, because some of the powers that each branch get is actually the ability to control or limit the power of another branch to make sure they're not abusing it. Okay, so why? Well, every decision must go through each branch of government and must pass through to be implemented. So this is a way to prevent that abuse of power, and it protects the people from being controlled by a single branch of government that might interfere with individual political rights. So what are these checks and balances? So here is this chart. So use this chart to fill out your notes. Now your notes have arrows, okay? So at the top of your paper is the executive branch, and I would definitely, you're probably gonna have to pause on this video to get this stuff down. But at the top of your lecture notes is this executive branch. Okay, so this executive branch, at the top, you're going to look at the inside arrows, and there is an arrow that points to the legislative branch, and I believe it is on the left side of the executive branch. You're going to want to write down can propose laws, can veto laws, make appointments. This is nominations. They make nominations to different jobs, to different positions within the government, and negotiate foreign treaties. Okay, so you're going to want to write that on the left arrow from on the left hand side down to the legislative branch. You'll want to do the exact same thing on the other inside arrow for the checks on the judicial branch, and that appoints federal judges and can grant pardons to federal offenders. There's some other checks that we will get more in depth with when we get to the actual branches of government. And then we have the legislative branch. So the legislative branch is on the left side of your notes. The arrow pointing to the executive branch, you want to write these things down, so make sure you pause. Can override president's veto, confirm executive appointments, that's a nomination, so they are confirm or approving of those nominations. Ratify treaties, because he negotiates those treaties, which is a check on the legislative branch because it acts like laws, but then they ratify them. Declare war, appropriates money. Appropriates money means they do the budget, so they're going to control all of those executive agencies, and can impeach and remove the president. And then on the judicial branch, the legislative branch, Congress, creates lower federal courts, can impeach and remove judges. It is a two-step process to impeach and remove. So we've had presidents that have been impeached, but they did not get convicted of their impeachment and therefore did not get removed. Can propose amendments to override judicial decisions. So if Congress doesn't necessarily agree with a judicial decision, then they can propose an amendment, and then they will approve appointments of federal judges. And then finally, your judicial branch, it is the same check on both of those branches. It is they can declare the actions of that branch as unconstitutional. So you probably want to pause, make sure you have written all this stuff down in those arrows on your notes. If you have any questions, please come see me or shoot me a message. And as always, don't do anything too stupid. Bye, guys.